You know, it's funny. I was just saying last time if anybody's seen The Last of Us premiere, because I thought it was premiering last week, and it turns out that's not actually the case. It turns out it premiered yesterday, as you pointed out, or not yesterday, but like a couple days ago.
All that's left is the water crystal.
Yeah, and the final
I just
fiend.
got my HBO Max restored today, so I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
I'm leeching off someone else.
Same here, and they,
You might not like this.
yeah, whatever. They were behind on a
You know I
payment,
like to
so
speak my
like
mind.
literally the day it came out.
Let's go.
I like how he just completely blows his friend off. He's like, I have something to say, and he's like, shut up, let's go. That looked terrible in the cutscene. Because Neon's hand just completely passed through his armor. So I have mixed thoughts on The Last of Us adaptation personally. First and foremost, I think it's just okay. And the second part is that I think it's unfortunately a very boring adaptation. And that could be taken a couple different ways. Like, number one, it's a very faithful adaptation of a game that was already built to be like a TV show. So
Let's find a way
when
to
it is a TV show that's based on a game, the fact that it could be one-to-one isn't really an impressive accomplishment, number one. And number two, because they're sticking so close to it, so far at least for the first episode premiere, for many people I'm sure that's going to be like, oh, it's great, it's all I wanted to see was just like the game but live action. It's like, but when you already play the game, it's practically like watching a live action show already. And if anything, you're just watching a giant cutscene, which is incidentally kind of like playing the game to begin with, which is watching a giant cutscene.
Let's go.
And I can't find that terribly exciting because if you do stick so close to the original stuff,
Memories are precious.
you know,
don't you
with the
think?
exception of like
so
swapping out like a
precious,
couple of
keep 'em
things
to yourself.
visually for different characters, which no offense to the acting cast because I think they're doing a good job. That's not fundamentally interesting. Because it's like you might as well just be watching a cutscene of the game itself. Why would you be watching it differently just with a different media format? I guess I just find predictability boring. What is this? Is this a ladder?
Much of a fight.
Oh yeah, it's a ladder you can kick down.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you do the research, you could even find behind the scenes, like mocap.
Yeah, exactly. Like they mocapped the original
Of all of
actors and everything, like they were making, you know, a movie anyway. Like they already acted everything out. We're literally just watching another rendition of a long cutscene. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this because one of the things that makes, like say The Walking Dead, popular example, it starts off very similar, you know, to kind of lull in the audience that's already into it, but then it starts deviating a lot, and while some people are like, oh, I don't like them deviating so much, at the same time that makes things unpredictable and interesting. Another recent example, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, people think that they just want, oh, we just want the same game, just updated in graphics, but do you really? Do you really want something so boring and predictable? For some people, sure. But for most people, especially if you want to grow that audience, that's not interesting. That's not exciting.
We'll use this to get back.
And so what I kind of hope that they're doing is something like The Walking Dead, where they're starting up, which is ironic because the original Last of Us borrowed very heavily from The Walking Dead, if people mysteriously forget. Like when The Last of Us came out, it drew very obvious inspirations from both The Walking Dead and The Road. And people magically forget that. It's like, yeah, it was based on something else. Like, it was been zombies were already like really big, and post-apocalypse movies were already pretty big. And I have no idea where you are, how to get to where you are. You just like ran off, and I couldn't even follow.
I think I just took a different path. I didn't know which way you were going. I think you went right, I went left.
I think that's pretty much true. But the door going your way, I think, disappeared. And because you're like below me,
Next fight might not be so easy.
and I have a ladder that
Oh,
goes up.
I fell down like there was like a staircase. There was like crumbled. I dropped down, so
Oh, okay.
thought that's where you went.
Let's go.
And so far, the first episode, it's a great adaptation, which also makes it fundamentally boring. And I was like, I really hope they do something to liven things up. Because if you just do things one-to-one, then what you're mostly attracting are people that already know the story, and that's not a new audience. There's no point in having a television medium if that's all you're going to do, is appeal to the same audience. And they're not. They're trying to appeal to an outside audience, which should be very translatable, easily.
Guess we'll have to see how it goes. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
they'll make, first episode or two will follow the game, and then it'll deviate, but only one way to know. Do we know how long this season's supposed to be?
I have no idea. And so, for me, just watching it as is, it's kind of like, it's like, well, if you know what's going to happen, then watching it as a TV show isn't exciting to me. I don't see a point. And I kind of hope that, like, this goes back to the main room, by the way. This is where I was. I have no idea where we're supposed to go. Oh, did you turn on a device, though?
Yeah, I think so. So there should be some,
Maybe the
probably
door
another
opens.
pressure plate that'll open a door. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Because let's say there's 10 episodes, and if each episode is roughly an hour and a half, then if it's 15 hours of just watching the same cutscenes, then I'm like, what's the point? Like, we've gone in a full circle. We've gone from a game based on a, well, not based on, but borrowed heavily is the polite way I will put it, from a movie and a graphic novel,
The only thing I can
built to be a
remember about
TV
home
show, becomes a TV
tall
show
grass.
based on a game. It's the same sort of recurrence as the Ratchet and Clank game, which was a game based on the movie
That's all
based
I
on
can
the game,
recall.
or even before that, early example, Street Fighter,
Not even the town.
where they
or
made
my
Street Fighter
house.
the game.
So
No, Street Fighter the movie, the
go
game,
home.
which was a game based on the movie based
go
on the
home,
game.
I can't remember
It's
at
like
all.
we've done this dance before, and it's never that exciting every single time. Is kind of like what I'm getting at the end of this. For people where this is their first foray of like, oh, it's a video game being turned into a live action show, it's like we've done this dance before. And so I urge caution.
Yeah, Cactuar in the distance. We'll have to get to that sometime.
Not where I am. We keep splitting up.
Oh, I was changing my class, so you just went on ahead while I was sitting there.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I'm right behind now.
I guess I'm the type of person where, and this is also important to realize too, I'm the type of person who, once I know enough about something, it becomes very boring and I need something else to keep me interested and occupied. Like, once I'm good at something, I don't like sticking with it. I like to move on and learn something new. Once I've watched a movie, I very rarely watch it again. Once I play a game, believe it or not, even my most favorite games, I very rarely play them again. Unless there's like a new version that has something new to it, in which case I'll play it again for the new stuff. To me, it's just the world of mediums, there's like, especially games, it's like there's so many. And this is not a slight against anybody who does it, but the type of people who's like, oh, every single year I play this game, or I like playing this one game all the time. And I'm not talking like an MMO where it's designed to be a live service. Those are different. Those are designed to be a thing. I didn't realize we were at a Tomberry. I cannot relate to that mentality.
Lucky.
Trust me, I understand. If it's literally just ends up being
If it's the
a
same
shot-for-shot
thing,
remake.
yeah, I personally find that very dull. It's like you had an opportunity with this medium called television to do something different than the medium of video games, and you choose to do the same thing. I find that a very much a waste of resources, which is why I suspect, holding out hope, that that's not going to be the case. That they're actually going to do something different. Oh, did he? Okay, I was about to say, like, I hope he didn't run away.
I have
we'll
a
see.
feeling at the very least the ending's going to be different.
I think it'd be hilarious if
like,
Joel
I
dies
just
in
can't
the
see it
end.
being-
That would really shock people. And I say that tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
where people are like, "Oh, he dies at the beginning of Last of Us 2." I'm like, yeah, but he didn't die at the end of Last of Us Part 1. Haha.
And hell, I mean, if he does die at the end of The Last of Us Part 1, then chances are there won't be the motivation to have The Last of Us Part 2 be the same. It'd have to be completely different if they did a second season.
Well, who's to say
That
that
was
this
what
even will be a
kickstarts
season?
everything.
Is this even a seasonal model? Did they say that?
Yeah,
Or-
I don't know. You're right, I have no idea.
Yeah, because I don't think they meant for this to be like a long-term thing. It sounds like a one-off project. Also, and I also have to remind people of this. If you're not aware, Sony Pictures habitually makes terrible scripts. Like I have to point this out. Like the best movies you're thinking of that come from Sony Studios were not made by Sony. So that's why I'm telling people to be cautious. Just be cautious.
If we can breathe, we can fight again.
Anyone that isn't at least a little cautious when viewing any sort of video game adaptation.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
is this your first time? Have you
They're
never
just
seen
very
video game
naive.
adaptations? How incredibly wild they are?
Not afraid.
Like, if you've never seen video game adaptations and you're like, this is so great, it's like, you must not have watched many adaptations in your life to have such boundful optimism when you see something going your way. Trust me, adaptations for video games seldom go the way you think they do. Very seldom. You are very naive if you think otherwise. Or you clearly just haven't been around the block.
Yeah, like, if you haven't seen one or two of the Bowl movies, then, then you really don't know how bad adaptations could be.
But there are a couple things to really look forward to. It's like, for example, Neil Druckmann, whether you like him or not, it doesn't matter. He is the person who wrote, directed, and produced this, so it is the original creator. You know, so that is something going for it. And they did put a budget behind this, because, like, the sets look pretty on point, you know? They paid for big-name actors. They didn't go cheap on the actors. So they spent money on this thing. Which, by the way, I never even knew who the girl was who played Ellie. People's like, oh, she's from Game of Thrones. I'm like, you say it like I watched Game of Thrones. Which I did watch some Game of Thrones.
So
I like to remind everyone in
in
chat that I did watch
I feel like we had a greater
some
purpose.
Game of Thrones, not all of it.
You two
And I always love bringing up the fact that
being from here
Season 8
and
was
getting
the
crystal.
best season I
No, don't
watched
wanna
of Game of
lose to
Thrones.
anyone else. I know I have to live and no.
Yeah, I don't even think she was in
No.
season 8. She has maybe
Jacoby has
across
to be over
the
here,
show
sis.
5-10 minutes of screen time at best.
And then I like to bring up after the fact
So-
that Season 8 is also the only season of Game of Thrones that I watched. Because Game of Thrones I also found horribly boring. Horribly boring. I could not get into it and like when the first few episodes came out. I was like, this is so dumb. And here's the thing is, I actually was aware of the book before the show came out, like years before. I had a friend who gave me his copy of A Song of Ice and Fire, like back when I was in college. And I tried reading that book and it was so boring. And I tried listening to an audio version of it. I was like, okay, let me just listen to it in the background. I found it incredibly boring. And then when I'm watching the show, I'm like, this is so boring. I just could not get into it. So I found it thrilling that so many people really enjoyed Game of Thrones during its heyday. But man, I was not part of that. I was like, you guys can have that party without me. And the only reason I even
Yeah,
watched
for
season
me-
8 was because everyone was like, this is the final season. I'm like, well, you might as well see how things turn out. Because literally everybody in my workplace would not shut up about it. I felt like I watched the show without even watching the show because of how much people would just, or at least the people I was working with, would just obsess over every single detail and tell a pretty decent story retelling of it. Where did that laser come from?
Strats. Yeah, for me, it took me till season 3 to finally get into the show. Like, the first 2 seasons were a slog for me, then when I finally got into it, rewatching them, they were a lot better. But then, season 5, like, everyone's like, oh, you know, the show only got bad at season 8, maybe season 7. I think it was terrible at season 5, when it pretty much, that was when it almost completely deviated from the books. And, like, you could just tell without...
Screw that.
Yeah, but deviating from the books doesn't inherently mean that it's bad, because like I said, I didn't even like the book. So, to me, a deviation would only be an improvement, in theory. But you can still, you know, deviate and be good. One of my best examples that I want to bring up is Castlevania, the Netflix series, which is the incredibly rare exception to video game adaptations. Not only deviating from the original stuff, but doing so in a way that actually is way better. Like, this version is fantastic. But not all of them are like that. A lot of people take story adaptations and either completely miss on what made the original story decent or watchable for the light, and that's without taking into account that a lot of games, and whoa, that beep just came out of nowhere, Jesus Christ, and are not built trying to be movies or games. And, you know, the tongue-in-cheek, wow, I love how I'm invincible with this execution, thank God, I was about to get beamed in the face. Okay, we gotta stop these beams. I see the shiny thing, I smack it.
That's what powered up the machine. We got one left to go.
Now then,
What is this
all
thing?
that's left is to smash the cannon to pieces.
What is this gun called? If it's called Vecna gun, I would absolutely laugh. Alright, just keep moving. Serpentine, serpentine.
Hope it's good.
And I get what you're saying, how, like, deviating from the books isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just for me. That clearly shows, like, yeah, they were good at taking what was already there and making it good, but when they ran pretty much out of the source material and had to essentially write fan fiction, they clearly weren't up to the task. At least in my opinion.
And that's the thing too, is like, was the problem really the rewrite, or was the problem the quality that people ended up with? Because I think the problem is what people ended up with they didn't like. And that, I think, is more the point. Where did you go, by the way? How did you get over there?
There's a ladder like halfway towards that first whatever power source that you destroyed.
Okay. Oh, there it is, yeah. I see. I totally didn't see this. I saw a lot of people in chat, I kind of want to read their replies because I see Otaku has thoughts and I want to read it, but I can't read it while dodging a giant laser.
Well, I'll take care of the laser then if you want to read it. Assuming I can reach the laser if that is.
Let's see. Sid said, my employee says The Last of Us show wasn't great. I would actually agree with that. I wasn't wowed by it. For the reasons I mentioned above. Otaku, however, says, watch the live action Last of Us, so far great adaptation, which I would agree, which is part of the reason why I think it wasn't that great. As crazy as that sounds. Otaku loved the game, and so was cautiously hopeful and exceeded expectations 10 out of 10. See, Otaku, I feel, is the target audience for the reason why they would start with a one-to-one adaptation, which is to attract and hopefully not trick and deceive the people that really love the base product. Like, they want to see literally the exact same thing they already just watched a cutscene of, but now it's a cutscene with real people, even though the cutscene they watched was with people. You know, the semantics. Let's see.
This one won't go down easy. Be on your guard.
Ataka says, I don't know, man, I respect your opinion. It must have been the part where I started saying that I don't think it's that great for XYZ reasons, but I think fans will always find a reason to knock on a series one way or the other. Joke's on you, Otaku, I'm not a fan. I actually always thought that Last of Us was just kind of like okay. I certainly am not of the extremist opinion where OMG, the end revolutionized my life, this is peak story writing. Gonna be real with you, I've seen better. I've read better. It's okay. It certainly does a good job of, like I said, it's written like a TV show. The game is written like a TV show, like a TV drama, and it succeeded in that aspect. It's nothing like the Halo TV series, thank God, in my opinion. I agree with you that Halo TV series was what happens where you take something and you don't just write a deviation, you completely write something entirely different and call it the core idol. That was just disrespectful. Halo will be the Halo TV show will be remembered as a disrespectful adaptation because it in no way, shape, or form attempted to appeal to people who liked Halo or even people who like dramatic sci-fi. It didn't appeal to anybody. Halo TV series was just straight up a failure. I think Last of Us show so far has done really well with the first episode. Could go bad after this, sure, but I feel like it has a strong start. Sure, has a strong start. That's good enough for you. Hopefully that is the case. Although we still don't know how many episodes there are going to be. I mean, you could argue watching The Walking Dead was pointless because people knew what was going to happen. No, that's the thing that's different, though, is that The Walking Dead, the very first episode, if you haven't seen it, the first episode mirrors the source material 1-to-1. But right then, in like the second episode, it immediately starts changing in very significant ways. And that's what I'm talking about. Is that it very early on was like, we're doing something different, so if you think you know what's gonna happen, you're wrong. And that's very true. The show and the original graphic novel are very different. They're both good for different reasons, and they have problems for different reasons. And that's why I'm saying let's reserve judgment until episode 2 to see. I am stunned in this wall. I can't do anything. I like how I got stun locked. No, it's fine. I got the NPC with me. I got stun locked into the wall.
I ran up to the...
Yeah.
Oh, I died. I tried... I accidentally went straight up to the laser because it was being distracted attacking you. But I can't destroy it because it's got the orifice that only Jack can kill. So,
Brutal.
and then endlessly respawning enemies.
Oh, okay.
So,
But to stop the giant
but now
fire,
it's attacking me despite the fact I'm dead.
you didn't break the giant orb though.
Yeah, I went the wrong way and went just straight up to the turret without going to the second orb.
Ah,
So,
gotcha. But yeah, that's why we will have to see where Last of Us is going. Is it going to remain a 1-to-1, or is it going to do something different? My money is it's going to do something different. I would be shocked and disappointed if it stayed 1-to-1, because that means that the appeal factor is going to be mainly with the people who like the source material, and everyone else can just bow out and you're not going to miss anything. And I think they know that. I like to think that they know that.
yeah, so hopefully they do make some changes.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Everyone's so strong. So much stronger now.
On your feet.
That helps.
Any potions left?
No room for mistakes.
I feel like we should save here as a checkpoint and move forward, because we have no revives left.
You ready?
Yeah. sounds good.
There we go.
Because somebody wasted a ball trying to take on that laser by himself.
There you are.
But I will say that is, for folks like Otaku, where it's like I just want a 1-to-1. I bet that they're ecstatic right now. They absolutely love it. Like I said, for the people like me who it's like, if it's a been there, done that situation, it's like I don't see the point. Like it would be a waste of my time to watch the show for something I already know is gonna happen. A and B, I've literally already seen how it's going to happen. Like what is the incentive to watch it? Is my argument.
Up ahead.
So we
So
will
it's
see.
only been one episode.
Yeah, like I said, that's just the early impressions. One thing I do like
The Walking
though
Dead.
is they did do a little bit better world building. Such as I really like the way that the show opened up with that sort of, it's exposition, but it's disguised really well. Where it's like, let's explain, how fungal parasites work. Let's explain how this, like they explained the premise, they explained like the fireflies, they explained the militant groups, they explained everything, all the factions, the major people involved, the actors. They did a very good job with exposition. There's only 1 or 2 times where people would be like, I'm going to explain this in-game lore to this other character
Should we take a breather?
in an unnatural way. They did that twice where I'm like, oh god, they did the classic maid and butler dialogue scene where I'm going to talk to you, somebody who already knows this thing, and explain world items that you should already know. Which works in a video game, but it's very weird to see in a... It's like, as you know, this is the 3rd anniversary of the creation of our country, which won its independence on this particular day with these particular people. It's like, nobody talks like that. Nobody talks like that. But you do in a video game to create exposition dumps. And it's weird to see that in a TV format.
The monsters are bad news, but the mist is even worse.
Dr. Fate, don't forget Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is a different example because the Cowboy Bebop adaptation did 2 things wrong. Number 1, it existed, and I don't mean that facetiously, because before they even saw it, the overwhelming majority of the Cowboy Bebop fan base was prepared to hate it. That thing was dead on arrival. The audience it was arranged for, or not even arranged for, the people that were fans of Cowboy Bebop were in no way, shape, or form ever going to approve. Even if that show was good, they would never admit it because their ego will never allow a live-action adaptation of an anime to be better than anime. Stop me if I'm telling lies. There is no situation where the core fan base that hated that show would ever admit the show did a better job at storytelling or characterization than the anime. They put the anime on such a pedestal, it was irrevocable. The amount of... Whoops, I'm about to die. Is there a way to dodge that poison attack?
A few steps behind. We got this.
But yeah, the hate mob was ready for Cowboy Bebop. They were ready to shoot it dead if it wasn't already dead on arrival. Because there were actually some good ideas, original ideas out of the Cowboy Bebop live action. But the point I want to point out that's hypocritical is the Cowboy Bebop manga is so different from the anime, but you don't see them screeching on the internet about it. But they want to screech about this adaptation. And the reason why is because they never read the manga. As much as many of them claim to be the most amazing Cowboy Bebop fans, they are fans of strictly the anime, and they will give literally nothing else a chance. It's because you didn't let them talk earlier.
Jack, I'm so happy. As long as you're around, I'm sure it'll be fine. Just tell me what you need me to do. Oh, right. Sorry, shut up. But if I become a warrior of light, why would I come back? I'm nobody around here anyway.
Alright, well, that wasn't that important.
It was Jeb. Of course, it wasn't important.
But the other part is that the Cowboy Bebop one did a couple of things. It did not do one-to-one to the anime, which if it was going to try to appeal to those people in the same way that Last of Us so far seems to be appealing to its core fan base, that would have been, correct me if I'm wrong, that would have been the only way that the fan base would have approved it, was a one-to-one version. Which, as I keep pointing out, fans never know what they want, they only know what they like. They would have liked to have seen a one-to-one, they would not have liked a live-action adaptation that was good. And then there's a third factor, which is the show, for the most part, even for what it offered, wasn't that good. And that didn't help the case. That didn't change the fact, though, that even if it was good, which we'll never know because it really wasn't that great, but it wasn't an absolute trash fire like people were absolutely trying to scandalize it as. It really wasn't. People were being super hyperbolic about it. Dr. Fate, the thing about live-action adaptations is that what makes it appealing is that it's the same as the original source. That is, I'm going to stop you right there. That is not true, and you know it. That's major cap. And different that it adds more information, even detail. Details like in some places the shop you do business in. For example, in the Persona 3 police station, the drugstore, you get some great medicines. That's an opening to add more. Did they do a live-action Persona 3? Dr. Fate, that's not true. They would have admitted it because if it was good, it would have been a step up to the world they love and expansion to the experience they treasure. Dr. Fate, I'm going to politely disagree with you. I do not have faith in the hardcore Cowboy Bebop and other anime franchises where they ever admit that something different from what they love can be better. I have seen that too often. I've seen that too often where the moment... Think about this. Real example. Every single video game that announces a remake... Every single video game that announces a remake, do you see optimism or do you see pessimism? You know it's pessimism. And the reason why it's pessimistic is because the core fan base already likes the one product. They like thing A. And thing B, there's a couple different emotions that can go in. There's a crowd that is afraid that thing B is going to be the exact same thing as thing A. So like what I was saying before, that's boring and pointless because that doesn't really outreach in any way. It's a waste of effort. Like, why would you do it twice? There's the potential where it does the same thing but does it worse, which is what they fear because they already have such a high opinion of thing A because it's the thing that they like. Or it's going to be thing B does something different and it succeeds in different ways, but now you have to compare the two products because they're different, which means you're going to have a division in the fan base, which they don't want because a lot of people are very conflict averse. They don't want to have to directly compare A and B because of the differences, but they know it will happen, and you know it happens. Don't take my word for it, go to the internet right now and look up Last of Us live action versus video game. You're going to see dozens of articles and videos and all sorts of comparisons because the moment something is different, it immediately creates a division and people love to compare the two. They love it. And they love it because if you can compare thing A and thing B, that means you can directly attribute I like thing A or thing B, therefore it's better. It creates that sort of discussion. It's been like that for decades, where you have, television adaptations of movies, cartoon adaptations of live action adaptations of cartoons when we went through that through the 90s, adaptations of books to film. There's so many cases where an IP crosses medium and that immediately creates division in the fan base. It happens every time. Always. Name one time a book has been adapted to a movie, and we don't have that comparison discussion. We always have the comparison discussion. There will always be the comparison discussion. Even with anime, if anime is based on like a manga, hell, even with an anime, you have the subs versus dubs. That rivalry will never end. Ever. And you know this. Because if somebody changes anything in terms of the context, the tonation, the names, the context, the phrasings, it immediately creates a point of conflict, and that immediately just becomes a comparable product. Always. Always. And the thing you will always see, I find, I shouldn't say always, that's extreme. The thing you will more often than not see is that the moment you imprint your preference on one thing, thing A for example, it is incredibly difficult to get people to shift their opinion that thing B, which is like thing A but different here, here, and here, can be better. It's that whole concept of you never forget your first. You know, the thing you fell in love with about whatever IP, that becomes the standard you measure everything else against. And let me tell you what, nostalgia is a hell of a drug for a lot of fan bases. Especially for many emotionally driven ones, where people have an emotional connection to something. Because I would challenge you, how many times, Dr. Fate, do we encounter times where we have a film based on a book, based on a comic, based on an anime, based on a video game, where it comes out and people are celebrating it? They are celebrating it because its existence, because it does such a better job of expanding upon whatever it is that base IP was. Because that is an exceedingly short list of the amount of times where that does not happen. I could think in my mind a couple of times where like, okay, that was a good live action film adaptation. And the reason why is because, like, take the case of when a film is adapted from a book. The film adaptation from a book is already an uphill battle, because when you read something and you read with the artist, you know, the writer already describing the character, you know, and writing, you know, the dialogue, you already in your head, your imagination is already at work creating the perfect example of what that person looks like, what that person sounds like. And the moment you see a casting decision on a live action version of that, you are going to disagree with it. There's going to be people like, oh, this person over here would be a perfect person to cast it because it's how you envision that character to be. And keep in mind, I'm obviously implying books that don't have like pictures or like, graphic novel or something like that, where obviously we see the artist's intended creation like a regular book. Because, yeah. Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson films? Really? Because there are a lot of people that would sorely disagree with that statement, especially when we take The Hobbit into account. And, like, The Hobbit completely nullifies any of the arguments you can put for Lord of the Rings films. Because Lord of the Rings films was appealing to an entertainment crowd. If you tried appealing to the people who, read the books, they were not pleased with those films. Because Peter Jackson had an emphasis on action, which Tolkien did not. Tolkien did not write action scenes. His battle scenes were like half a page. He was like, they fought and that side won. Or he would cut to another scene. Peter Jackson, however, had this big theatrical battle scenes that are super epic and everybody loved and was super impressed with film-wise, but that isn't technically the spirit of the books at all. He made it because entertaining, that was something you could do in the medium format. But what was the cost of that? The cost of that was many arcs, many characters. Famous example, Tom Bombadil. Oh, wait, hold on. I think we're about to enter something that's like horribly overleveled for us. I'm going to exit us out.
Fine. We were 10 levels below for that last mission.
No, we weren't. That was level 54.
No, that was level 62. That was the next story mission.
Was it? Oh, we're supposed to do the side mission.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Okay, I guess we're good then.
We're on easy.
Yeah, that's true.
I have something to confess. Just like Jed did.
Solomon, I can actually say the more I love something, the more I'll point out its flaws.
See.
Oh, absolutely. I love that
I'm not
honest
like you
type
guys.
of
I
candor,
was born here.
because a lot of people, especially if
For the
you
longest
would
time, I
listen to
couldn't
like my
remember how
behind the
I got
scenes
this.
videos or even
Now
my
I
rants
do.
on Discord about any
The one
particular
who
game,
gave
you
it
would
to
probably
me
assume that I hate a lot of things,
was
and that's not
Astos.
true.
I remember
As we
meeting
just had the
him.
Chrono Cross discussion earlier
Chaos
today,
Giant.
Fatal,
He gave me the
I
crystal.
separate my personal feelings when it
told
comes
me
to
I'd be needing
analysis and criticism,
I took it from him.
because it's not about me. It's not about my
and yielded
feelings.
to the darkness.
It's about me removing myself
thing I
when
knew,
I'm,
you guys
you
were
know,
there.
trying to remove as much bias
sure
as
beats my
possible
confession.
when stating
I felt like
like an opinion and
I
then
had been
providing supporting
waiting for that
evidence.
moment for a long
Trying to
time.
remove myself as much as possible. And the more you are familiar with
I don't
something,
remember much
like say
anymore.
I love The Legend of Zelda, but I will also absolutely criticize it on
All
its
I
many
know
flaws.
now is that
And completely understand why
want
some
to
people
see
do
this
not like
through
that
to the end.
franchise. I don't try to go out there trying to persuade
it just
people
as
you
badly
have to
as you
like it
guys
because
do.
of XYZ
I
garbage
won't give
reasons
up.
they don't care about.
I know we can do this together.
That is overvaluing your opinion and yourself way too much, and not
Trying to be
respecting the
weird
fact that the
when you're
world's
out.
bigger than you.
Right.
I mean, trust me, like
becau-
I said,
But the reason why I can
understood
say that is
over-
because I love the series so much, and I really pay attention to a lot of it. Not to the point where I'm, obsessing over every bit of lore, because I know people like that, and I'm not on that level. I want to be on that level. But I can competently speak about any of them. But it's not about me. And that's the other thing too is, if they did make a live-action Zelda, because let me tell you what, they made like a live-action cartoon of Zelda, not live-action cartoon, but the cartoon version of Zelda. When people are like, oh, Link would be great voice acting, like we've had Link's voice acted before. Have you never heard of the Legend of Zelda cartoon? That cartoon wasn't great. It existed.
we can all hope that they would have a little more respect for it compared to an 80s cartoon, but I do get what you're saying there. But yeah, no, like you're saying with Chrono Cross, like, yeah, I completely understand your criticisms, especially with the characters and everything, and I can't really disagree with it. It doesn't bother me, like I said, and
Looks like we're in the ocean.
but I
I
get
should've
that the
guessed.
characters
Where else would the fiend of
definitely
water be?
should have been much better written, much better developed. But that is kind of the problem, especially in Chrono Cross with having so many characters.
Yeah.
What
Well,
can you do about that?
to restate what I said earlier on the, if you ever want to watch it, by the way, go to my side channel, Ovium Plays, and look at the tier listing where I directly compare like Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger, and Radical Dreamers. And one of the things I will say is Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games, RPG-wise, of all time. Love that game. Chrono Trigger has awful character writing and wastes half of its cast. Chrono Cross does that as well for many things. However, the benefit that Chrono Cross has is that unlike Trigger, you don't have to recruit those useless characters. You can completely ignore them, and as the game does. But the ones that they do write for in Chrono Cross, they absolutely do a better job writing for it. Because I do not believe that what is my favorite is automatically better. We're not going to compare quality based on preference. Like, my fantasy is not reality. To quote a popular meme, the facts don't care about your feelings.
Say Dr. Fate. No, you can't say that The Hobbit doesn't count.
The Hobbit
With
doesn't
your Lord of
count?
the Rings
No,
argument.
yeah, you can't dismiss The Hobbit.
I know that song.
You said Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson. I know you probably meant like the main trilogy, but that you can't ignore that. Just like we can't ignore Rings of Power.
Don't care.
Rings of Power did something different. Did it do something good? I can't speak for it because I didn't watch it, but I would say general sentiment would not approve of it. I mean, if we're going to talk like, say, Harry Potter, it's like they made 8 films, and I know people that only watch the films. And as somebody who read the books and enjoyed the books, like, I felt the first, 2 or 3 did a good job of being adaptations, but then is definitely the 4th one where they just started, in my opinion, the pacing problems and what they chose to focus on and what they chose not to focus on was becoming problematic, where I'm like, I don't see how anybody who watching the films and just the films can really enjoy this. You know what? It's not about me. I think a lot of people would agree, though, that the 4th movie onward is when it started just getting sloppy. Alright, we need to open this door. Probably need to go into this room. And...
Yeah,
are these
probably.
terminals? Are these things we hit? Oh, there are switches. Those are things that explode.
We should definitely keep a wide berth.
Oh, we need key cards.
Those do not hit with fire.
Was it because we destroyed that chamber?
Anyway, it's open. Let's go.
Back to
No
what
sweat.
you're saying about how Tolkien didn't really write action scenes in his books. Like, just think about the entire 3rd movie of The Hobbit, the Battle of Five Armies. That's like, what, 10 pages of
It has
the book?
same design.
If even, like, The Hobbit was not a long story.
Find a generator.
It really was. It was, yeah, like a 200-page kids book. And yeah, they took, like, yeah, the last, like 2 chapters and turned it into an entire movie that, which in that length they could have done the entire Hobbit.
Oh, this thing could be
Well,
broken.
and-
Alright.
Yeah, I was not a fan of the 3rd Hobbit movie. That one was. I'm pretty sure most people agree that one was just absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Because I feel, and keep in mind, I'm going to circle this all back to the original thing. What people are looking to get out of an adaptation does vary just as much as what they look to get out of an original consumption of whatever IP it is, whether it's a book, whether it's a game, whether it's a manga, doesn't matter.
Stay on your toes.
Yeah, like, yeah, we can go back to, say, like, the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, for instance. You know, that's very mixed with the fans, especially those that played the original and those that didn't. You know, personally, I was never a fan of the, you know, original fixed camera, tank control style of the game. So that, I'm not really good at that type of gameplay and stuff, so...
Well, that's like a remake, though, and not an adaptation, though. Like, I'm talking about
Yeah,
adaptations.
I know, but,
Gotta love
yeah,
shortcuts.
but in a way, it is still like adapting, you know, the old game into a modern sense. You know, they could have done it.
That's
the
a
same
stretch.
way. And like I said, if people,
That's a
it's
stretch.
kind of just going back to what we were saying about
That's fine.
The Last of Us, though. Like
Yeah.
how, like what your expectations are for this,
Yeah.
and how. You know,
Well, if we're
the
talking about
people
The
that
Last of
wanted,
Us when it
you know,
comes
a
to
one-to-one
remakes,
remake-
apparently what they wanted to do was remaster a game with less features than its original remaster that came out, you know, what is it, 8 years ago,
There's one.
and
Follow me.
charge more for it. But here's the thing,
Yeah.
though. The purpose of that was not to appeal to people who already bought the game and played it and all that. That what it was to do, the whole reason why they added that remaster over remaster was because the PC port. The whole point was not the PS5 port. The whole point was the PC port.
I'll be honest, I was expecting Sony to blacklist the Last of Us remaster for PS4 after they made the remake.
Yeah, because like if
make
you
it
are,
so you literally won't work on PS5 anymore.
yeah, because if you have a PS5 and you have PS Plus, you already have access to the PS4 remaster of the PS3 game. You don't need to buy the PS5 remaster of the PS4 remaster of the PS3 game. You don't need to. Unless you just like owning all the versions a game released on, which I get. If you're a super avid fan, that's something you want to do. I get that. But for like the average person, there's no reason to. That's why the reason of that release was not for the PS5, it was centered on the PC version who, you know, normally speaking, did not have access to the PS4 or the PS3 version of The Last of Us. That's who was the actual target audience. So people who are trying to argue from a PS5 perspective are already misguided. It wasn't about them. It never was about them.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's the nature of fan bases to be selfish.
We've got a hard road ahead of us.
Yeah.
Think before you strike.
But to go back to what Dr. Fate was referencing earlier,
Breathe.
I do agree that many times there are adaptations that do give the opportunity to expand a world in a more interesting way. And what I'm going to reference is the Legend of Zelda manga. Legend of Zelda manga, or even like the Pokemon Adventure series. The Pokemon Adventure series, very loosely based on like the games, which are already, of course, very sparse when it comes to world building and obviously completely devoid of character building.
The air.
But the mangas of them are fascinating because they take place in that world setting. They're very respectful to the world setting, but they create such interesting dynamic characters, plot lines, arcs, that it is a good product first before it is a good adaptation. And that's what makes it good, is that they focus on being a good story first, not being a quote-unquote faithful adaptation. Being a faithful adaptation would have been useless to that medium. It is not interesting to read a visual representation of the Legend of Zelda or Pokemon story. It wouldn't be. That would be stupid. It'd be lazy. It'd be
What do you
boring.
think of Princess Sarah?
Instead, they made
least it's
an
not
interesting
talking to the
story,
past.
interesting character
Asking about
development,
you now.
some
got no
drama,
interest in her
some
as a
adding some
person.
emotional storytelling to
know
it.
I have to
That
protect her
is
at all
fundamentally the
costs.
reason why you would
Well,
have
she
it in
is
a
the
manga
symbol
form,
of
and
hope
that's
and
why
peace
it's
in Cornelia,
succeeded.
after all.
If you really want to protect
It's
the
because they
princess,
embraced the medium
How about
form
becoming a
first.
knight?
It's kind of the debate that
up to
people
the
have
royal
even
family.
right now,
Even
which
if you
is
were knighted,
what role do, you know, there's a lot of controversy, what was it, a decade ago, in terms of
Maybe that's how we got here.
movie-based games or walking sims, you know? What is the role of that? Because a lot of people are like, well, the whole point of the game is to have, like, you know, engagement and stuff like that, and when there's not really engagement, if you're watching a game more than quote-unquote playing a game, you know, what is really the point of this? It's just a glorified movie. And there's validity to that, especially as we've increased many games, and Last of Us can be included in this, where cinematic storytelling does have you watching the game more than, say, you know, engaging in gameplay mechanics. But is it a criticism to point that out? Some people would view that as an attack, but it's not really an attack. You know, it's pointing out a fact. And, before we get too much into, like, well, is it good, is it bad? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What matters is, did you like it or not? If you liked it, great, move on with your life. If you didn't like it, great, move on with your life. The answer's the same either way.
Open sesame.
By the way, why were those pirates so upset?
Yeah, you know, it's just
right now
yeah.
we're at the mercy of the wind. But if we
Dr.
revive
Fate, you
the
are
water
aware that the
crystal,
Hobbit books was made before
we
The
can
Lord of the
restore
Rings,
the
right?
balance, and the
I like how
sea
you're
will
attempting
settle.
to... Oops, fell off the edge.
I admit I'm
And a lot of people didn't
proud
even know that The
details.
Hobbit was till
I doubt
reading
those
Lord of the
pirates
Rings.
know either.
Before you get off on that
Something tells me
tangent,
they'd be a
Dr.
bad
Fate,
movie
I would like to
either way.
point out that that has nothing to do with the original discussion we were having, which is the adaptation of Peter Jackson's, of the books to the movies. That point has nothing to do with it. Like, even if that fact is true, and it's true that people don't know it, that also has nothing to do with what we were talking about. So, please stay on topic.
We've come pretty far down.
The water crystal can't be too far off now.
Minutes there,
Let's go.
honestly.
I mean, it's the classic, what does that have to do with the price of eggs in China? It's like, that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. Speaking of the price of eggs, I love how it's memeing right now in terms of just how pricey eggs are. Where is the switch we're supposed to be hitting for this? Oh, there's a ladder down there.
And
Yeah.
the key cards.
Yeah. I just not noticed a ladder.
All right,
Oh.
we got the black key cards, so we can
keys a
open
little
those
different
couple
from the other
doors.
ones.
Yeah, it just turned on. I should be aware that it's like, look for any
Okay.
brightly colored object, and that's what you're supposed to go to. But me, I just want to explore all these little, you know, nooks and crannies.
You free your legs.
Because I feel fundamentally, before we talk about if something was a good adaptation or not, the people involved in the discussion kind of need to ask themselves, well, what were you expecting going in? Because checking your expectations and then going into it, that really is going to shape the conversation.
Win is a win. Let's go.
Be ready for anything.
Like, anyone here that's like expecting a more faithful remake of Final Fantasy 1, like,
Yeah, like even this game, the game that we're literally playing, it's a reimagining, you know, of Final Fantasy the original.
Yeah, we saw the trailers. We knew what we were expecting, and you know.
And whether or not you like
Especially
this
with the
game or
collab.
not, like, it depends on what you come out of it. Some people will be like, oh, well, you know, why don't they just make a one-to-one of Final Fantasy? You know how many times Final Fantasy 1's been remade?
Up ahead.
You know?
Come on, follow me.
And some people like it, some people don't. It doesn't fundamentally matter. it's
Make a Final Fantasy 1? Well,
like some
fix
people
the
maybe just
remaster.
wanted like what they did with the 3D remasters of 3 and 4, for example. Some people like that they gave each of the characters a lot more personality, more voice acting in 3. I personally didn't.
That was rough.
I can learn from this.
And it's just kind of,
Yeah,
again,
so
what
there.
were you expecting? Oh, you know what? I haven't really upgraded my gear at all. There we go.
There's that sinking feeling again.
yeah, the boss is right up there, so.
Yeah.
Solomon, what games off the top of your head do you prefer to 100%, if any?
Stop dragging your
I
feet,
have
Chad.
long graduated from those days.
Me out?
If you caught me like 2 gens ago, I was in that era, you know, where it's like, oh, I get games and I like to 100% them. I used to really like to do that. But then as I started doing just more things, having more responsibilities as life does honestly bring up to you, and even doing side projects like this channel, I've had to make the choice where it's like, it's not worth my time to 100% a game anymore. And honestly, I don't miss it. I really don't. If I could go back in time and tell my younger self, hey, all this is a waste of time. You can play way more games than the time and experience way more stories, way more adventures, way more characters, and the time it takes you to, you know, just worry about getting every little last whatever in this one game. Granted, back then, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a lot of time, and so I could afford, quote unquote, through time and not money, to 100% these games. But these days, the opposite's true. Money's not really necessarily a concern, but time is, and so my time is more valuable than 100%ing the game.
It just depends on the game itself. You know, there are those that, yeah, I want to go out of the way and get 100%, but anytime I realize
Cut through your friends first.
over the years, anytime I force
Give us
myself to
back the
100% for the platinum trophy or whatever other reason, I just end up resenting the game more and more as I have to go through the tedious bullshit to 100% if I'm not enjoying it anymore. I'm
Yeah.
doing it for completion.
What would we do?
Yeah, if the sake is just for completion, that's not valuable enough for me. Like, you kind of have to be worth my time. Like, I could be doing this, or this right now. But if the choice is, you know, kill 1,000 rats for this, you know, triumph or achievement,
Time to listen to your
or this
nonsense.
trophy, I don't care. 5 years from now, I'm not going to care that I killed 1,000 rats in this video game. I'm not going to care.
Yeah, like, you know, I could take a game like Breath of the Wild where I enjoyed pretty much every minute of that game, everything I did, but I know if I tried to get all those Korok seeds, I would not, I probably wouldn't love the game as much as I do right now. I know part of me would just go through every little aspect trying to find all those.
Yeah, come remind me, I want
We must avoid getting hit at all costs.
Better tread carefully.
I have no MP.
Not off to a good start.
touched the checkpoint before this, did we?
I don't know if we did or not. But I'm starting to
had
feel
two questions, so.
I'm starting to feel the effects of us being horribly under leveled. That's okay. This means we have to get good.
Yeah. I'll have to.
He's definitely angry. So what? We'll save him now.
He's watching our every move. Be careful.
The water's protecting it. This can't be good.
Man, it is reckless to try and cast on this guy. It's like he's reading our inputs. We made it. But to wrap all of this up, because I really feel like we've discussed this and and gotten some weird tangents. The whole thing is, The Last of Us premiere was okay, and I would prefer if they do something radically different that's more interesting than a one-to-one retelling. But that is my expectations going into this.
As such, you should touch it as much as possible.
And I'm also cynical because
Your
the
personal
overwhelming
memories will be
majority
stored in that
of
device, too.
adaptations when it comes to video games
There is
do
much to
something
be gained
different.
from memories of your experiences. If you fail to do so,
Good, bad, or indifferent.
you run the risk of forgetting when you transfer.
I don't care. It's not worth remembering.
Don't say that. You are nothing if not the sum of your memories.
Dr. Fate, actually it does. You actually said actually. Interesting. When I made the claim Hobbit doesn't count, if they are not meant to connect, then making an adaptation of the two with a connection is destined to create unattractive chaos and tragedy. Well, that just sounds a little dramatic. Chaos and tragedy? That's what we're playing right now. I believe that's a little bit dramatic, Miss Dr. Fate. Besides, don't overlook the original point with that discussion, which is the fan base. Because remember what the setup to that was? I wanted you to come up with an example of a fan base with an adaptation where you feel the core fan base would be very pleased with it, and your suggestion was the Lord of the Rings movies. So let's go ahead and for the sake of this example, since you are unwilling to cooperate on the Hobbit point, let's just go ahead and ignore it. It's fine. Looking at just the core movies, I am surprised somebody as passionate about that fan base as you are, who enjoyed the stories and know the lore and the characters so well, would be satisfied with what they chose to do with the movies versus the amount of unused and unreferenced material in the core game. And you would be deaf to the people that also point that out. I'm actually kind of surprised you would take that position. But you feel that was a satisfactory adaptation versus all the other major story points that simple trilogy alone provided.
Right.
What was your words? Chaos and tragedy?
Birds are moving, so that means the sea's back to normal.
So now what?
Beats me.
Should be clear sailing ahead. We tore the roots of evil out of this world, after all.
Something wrong?
It's still there. The feeling that
Chaos
is waiting somewhere. It hasn't left me.
Well, why don't we go back to the castle? We can tell them about the fiends we fought and the crystals we revived, which makes us...
Warriors of Light?
Yeah, Warriors of Light, like in the prophecy.
Because it doesn't really take any amount of literary genius to point out that in the Lord of the Rings books, is the focus of the books battles, action, and combat? No, not in the slightest. But battles, action, and combat gets butts in movie seats and sells tickets, and that's the reason why they focus on that in the movie. Like, take the Mario movie that's coming out soon. A lot of people were very upset that they didn't have Charles Martinet voice Mario. But you're kind of missing the big picture, ironically, of why they did that. You don't really have to think very hard about it. The average person does not know and certainly doesn't care or even recognize Charles Martinet. That's not who the movie's oriented to. You may think, because you are a fan who would like to see a Mario movie, that you would want to have the voice that you recognize as Mario for the last couple of decades be the voice of Mario. But that movie is not meant for just you. That movie is not even meant for the people who just play the video game. That movie is meant for a general audience of both adults and children. And you know what name a lot of adults and children right now will recognize? They will recognize the name Chris Pratt. They will recognize the name Jack Black. They will recognize most of the people that they cast as those voices, because those are the names that will sell tickets and get butts and seats. Saying Charles Martinet on the poster will not sell tickets and get butts and seats. It's really simple. So the people outraged on that on, like, you know, YouTube and social media, I'm just shaking my head because they're stirring up, you know, obviously it's for clicks and views, but you're missing the point. And I believe they understand it, but they're just choosing not to for views. But I will give you a freebie, because here's the thing, chat, if you don't already know. I love to invoke a conversation and debate on points that even I don't necessarily agree with, because it's a lot more interesting. On the point of adaptations that are more well received and honestly better than the source material, I'm surprised that people didn't recognize the easy answer, which is what I was expecting, which is classic literature. A lot of classic literature is much better in the more condensed, concise media format, because a lot of the source materials, let's take Charles Dickens, for example. If you've ever read a Charles Dickens book, even if you had to be assigned one in middle school, you know that shit is long and drawn out and overly exhaustively detailed with a lot of filler. You'd swear this man was trying to hit a quota. It is way better, granted, there are many different good and bad adaptations of any given classic literature, but the whole point is, like, a lot of classic literature was very bloated, and so a more condensed focus, I can almost say recap, but rendition of that story is much better, while still hitting the major themes, major plot points of a lot of these playwrights, or sorry, I was just immediately distracted by this cutscene.
Something bad is stirring. And it's not just the storm.
Because that's an example of when it's actually better received. Is when you get a version of any classic literature where they, you know, actually do a good job of nailing the premise, nailing the themes, nailing the characters.
Yet we return to sneers and snickers.
I guess you could say it's a lot more efficient storytelling if done right.
Have something to say, then say it now.
Lucan's prophecy says 4 warriors of light will come. 4! One of you is an imposter.
Excuse me?
We trusted you. It's all your fault.
Says who? You? You? Or maybe you?
The darkness looms around us, closer than ever. What did you do?
So much for a hero's welcome.
Let's head to the castle. We should get a warmer reception there.
I like the jacket that Neon's wearing. Jack Black is Tom Bombadil. that would actually get butts and seats.
You! What have you done?
Some reception.
Exactly what you told us to do. We found the lost crystals and restored their light.
And yet flames leap wild from our hearths. Fierce gusts of wind rattle our windows. The waves lash at our shores, and the land shifts and groans under our very feet.
I'm sure it's just the crystals doing their thing. Might take some time to get used to it. But I bet this is what this world is supposed to be like.
Oh, they speak of you as demons in the town below. They call you dark servants of chaos.
Minister, you go too far. Yes, that was rude. The history of Cornelia is tightly bound to chaos. Who can remember a world without its dark presence lurking in the shadows beside us? Yes, the crystal's light has been restored, but we cannot expect the prosperity of our lost golden age to reappear overnight, as if by magic.
Sarah.
Change is never easy. Until peace returns, is it not our responsibility to be the light of hope for the people? To give them a beacon to look to for comfort?
Your Majesty, terrible news. The pirates of Pravica are running amok in the city.
What?
That rabble is no match for our soldiers. Capture them at once. No, slaughter them.
Monsters have invaded the city, Your Majesty. It's chaos in the streets.
Chaos.
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 Seal the gates! Defenders to the walls! Protect the castle!
Malloy!
What now?
Fighting's what I live for. Or have you
How
forgotten?
did you live to kill chaos? Jack has character development for it. He lives for fighting now. He doesn't just live to kill chaos. Is this single player or is this still single player? I guess it is.
Yeah, I'm actually a little behind on the cutscene, so.
Oh, oops. Hopefully I didn't
Need a minute before
spoil anything.
You literally said chaos.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just saying what the cutscene was saying. But if I'm ahead, I don't want to spoil anything. Spoilers, chaos. This is why it's rated M for mature.
Jack, we're glad to have you fighting by our side. We'll remain here to protect the royal family.
Jack!
And then Jax just goes like, bullshit, and then pulls out his MP3 player and walks away.
Come on.
Come on, follow me.
That is what Sakaguchi wanted in the original game. That was his original thought, but the NES just couldn't handle that.
Yeah. I should have just had auto lock switch once I defeat an enemy. I think it really would be a lot better. Because I do find myself just manually targeting after whatever's done.
These pirates have all
I haven't even noticed what I have it set at.
Or we die.
Chaos!
Stay on your toes.
Better tread carefully. This looks good. Nice. Take it from here, Leon.
Jack again.
You got it.
Yeah, I didn't see the option for this to be like co-op, so I think this part has to be single player.
Like Sarah says, the world changes.
Does it make you play as Jack in your own file?
Still,
Yeah, and then just my Jack just turns into ash when I join your game.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, you get a quarter of the camera just like does its own thing.
Show me what you can do. Now watch and learn from the thing.
Sword breath.
Focus on how we can do better next time.
Alright, that's not weak to fire. I think it is weak to fire. It is resistant to these attacks though.
Okay.
And we'll call it a night.
Hydrate doesn't even sap any of your MP. A waste of an attack.
Alright, who's next? Oh.
I doubt we can expect a thank you even if we save her.
They think we're to blame.
Fools. I can't tell who's more
You
twisted.
really can't get the finisher very quickly as long as you attack their elemental weaknesses. It's nice and convenient.
This warrior of light cloud doesn't seem all it's cracked up to be.
Like, where's the army in all of this? I just see us fighting out here and a couple of them going.
Family.
There's
That's how the
little
cutscene starts.
monsters. And yeah, they got some of them got slaughtered, but that's not all of them, right?
They said they were gonna. We attack the main guys, they'll protect the royal family. That's what
Yeah,
they said.
yeah, those guys said that. What about the rest of them? What are you gonna protect them from if nobody's out there actively trying to kill them?
Maybe literally that was like the guy saying the entire army is going to protect the royal family.
Hmm. Oh, it is lagging? Oh, it is lagging. I'm looking at the frame rate drop.
No way. Captain?
Uh-oh. I may lose connection. Hold on. Wait, can you not pause this game? Okay, let's say. Yeah, my internet's doing all sorts of gymnastics right now. Sorry about that, chat. It was ugly there for a second. Like, now that I look at it, I see it fixing itself, but... Oof, that was rough there for a second. Apologies.
We've got a hard road ahead of us.
Just keep hitting them.
This attack called the Ho-Ho. That's funny. We're even like level 70 gear, actually. I need to be equipping this stuff.
My crew, my friends, the darkness seduced them like a siren.
Yeah, we noticed.
Wasn't much human left in them, eh? The sea, she's changed. We lost our home, a way of life.
All us old sea dogs were scared, confused, angry. And that's when the darkness took hold. It happened in the blink of an eye. I couldn't do anything for them. Captain, I'm just a deckhand past his prime.
Let's get you some help.
No, lad. I've
Strangers
set
of Black
sail for the
Paradise. Yeah,
last
sorry
time.
about that.
So you
Santos.
came here just to die?
Thanks for jumping in the stream.
No. I came here to find you. I went looking for Arstex, figuring he could put a stop to all this, but that sneaky scoundrel was nowhere to be found. Find him for their sakes.
Astos.
If my guess is right, he's been sparring with Chaos longer than either of us can reckon.
You told us he made a deal with Chaos. Which is it?
I can't well say for sure, lad. His heart is filled with hatred, clouded with an unspeakable darkness. He hides it well, but when I catch a glimpse of it, I shudder. It's a cousin of Chaos, if not the thing itself.
I feel the forces of chaos are at work. Effing on my internet.
I thought I was good at reading people, but
What happens when you
elves,
restore the
that's
4
another matter.
crystals?
I
Whether
guess so.
servant of darkness or light, his secrets are beyond me. You're going to have to figure it out for yourselves.
Tell us where to go. Tell us where we can find Astos.
Follow the bats. They're his creatures.
Got it.
This may sound odd coming from an old corsair like me, but don't give in to hatred. Don't let it control you. Or you'll end up like old Vicky. I don't even know who to hate anymore. How did it all end up like this?
So did he die?
I've never made it this far before. In all my fragmented memories, nothing resembles this.
What happens now?
We dive headfirst into the unknown. All right, let's get a move on.
Are you done with your stuff?
BK, so I'm in the cutscene.
Yeah, he talks for a bit. I can only assume he's dying because, you know, it's like, it's a big I'm dying monologue. But at the same time, it caught me off guard because no one else in this game so far has had a graceful death. Everyone either dies very violently. So it was like, him slowly passing away is actually kind of bizarre for this game. He doesn't just explode in crystals or have his head ripped off or something like that. For some reason, Big K gets a graceful death.
He does explode crystals when you give him a finisher in the fight, though.
Yeah, but he's not like, gibbled like everybody else we punch into crystals. It's hard to say. And I'm watching my internet like just leap up from like really good to like absolutely abysmal. It's one of those nights.
I think we get those nights every other stream, don't you?
I may just restart the stream, honestly, because whenever it's this jarred, I'm just gonna restart things. Actually, I'm just gonna do that because it's way too chaotic right now. So I'm gonna be right back. If it disconnects chat, I apologize. Technical difficulties, but just refresh, or worst case scenario, just come back in a minute. But just take a water break. We'll be right back. Because I see it dropping down to like 0 frames. Well, this is problematic. I see it unable to reconnect back. Let me check. Is it actually streaming right now?
No, the stream ended.
It's ended.
Yeah, ended.
Oh, okay.
Can't even get back onto it right now.
Okay.